There have been over 1,000 arrests enforcing an injunction against blockades, stopping Surrey-based logging company Teal Jones from operating. The protests began in May of 2020. A month before the blockade started, an old-growth strategic review was submitted to the province. It is an independent review of how BC should manage the old-growth trees. The review was released last September and calls for a paradigm shift for all stakeholders. Garry Merkel, a member of the Tahltan First Nation, is one of 2 professional foresters hired to create a new framework after speaking with 800 British Columbians.
Part of this report speaks about the necessity of bringing everybody together and planning this transition together, because this is a major shift, and you don't want to have government trying to drive the whole thing, because then they just become the lightning rod for trying to impose something too big on society. We need society, the key players, to all collaboratively plan how we move through this transition.
One recommendation is Indigenous involvement, moving from very little involvement to a government-to-government Indigenous relationship. Another key recommendation, Merkel says, is moving to a system adopted in other parts of the world, where the health of the ecosystem is prioritized.
If you take care of the health of the ecosystems, the aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems on a landscape, it will take care of all the rest of those things for you. You take care of the land, it takes care of everything else.
The Ministry of Forests sent an email statement to APTN News detailing the plan to modernize. In a break from divisive practices of the past, we will engage the full involvement of Indigenous leaders, organizations, industry, and environmental groups to find a better approach on the future of old-growth forests in BC. But Merkel says while some of the recommendations have been implemented, there's still a long way to go. In some areas of BC, there is an abundance of old-growth forests, but in most areas of the province, these forests are up against the wall, and they need to defer logging. Merkel says BC set targets or limits on how much old-growth logging was permitted, but without monitoring to keep track, they've blown past those targets.
We are right now in a situation where we have taken so much of the old forest that we are down to remnants in certain areas. And if we have any chance of managing for ecosystem health, we need to defer harvesting in those areas until we can build an ecosystem health plan.
Merkel says the predominant way of harvesting in BC is still clear-cutting. Even practices thought to be banned are still taking place, like progressive clear-cutting.
Which means we thought we banned this, but I've seen pictures of valleys right now that we're still doing this. We start in one part of the valley, we work our way up, and then we kind of spread until the whole valley is gone. That level of disturbance in an area that has never been used to it sets that ecosystem back thousands of years.
This year, the BC government formed a technical panel to assist with carrying out changes. In an email statement to APTN News, the Ministry of Forests shared, "Since September 2020, we've designated 11 areas that contain almost 200,000 hectares of old growth that is deferred from harvest." Merkel is part of this new panel and says,
"So we just need to defer in those areas, give us a chance to build a plan, and then figure out if and how they fit into the harvest timing over generational."
As the province works towards implementing the Old Growth Strategic Review, protests continue on Vancouver Island, calling for province-wide protection of old-growth trees. Lee Wilson, APTN National News, Kitimat.